Hey guys, I wish we were out on the trail, but instead I've got a parking lot and an awesome electric bike from Fuji. This is their Ambient 27.5 plus 1.3. 27.5, that's a call out for these 27.5 inch diameter wheels here with plus size 3-inch wide tires. They have gone with boost on this bike, which means that the hubs are slightly longer, 148 millimeters versus 142 in the back, 110 versus 100 millimeters in the front. So that gives the spokes a stronger bracing angle. They just make the bike feel stiffer, and then a little bit wider in general so that these bigger tires don't rub on this, the suspension, the chain stays here, seat stays. So this bike is totally purpose built, and I actually really like the look of it. You can see there's a little cutout here with a plastic slap guard, a little sticker so that you won't get as many chips. I feel like even though this looks cool, it's maybe unnecessary, and it's not going to do a whole lot when you've got chain bounce up high, because see, the chain can still hit right here. The extra wide yoke to fit those plus size tires. The yoke is this part. Maybe when you shift down to the higher gears, you're riding at high speed. That's when the chain bounces the most. Maybe it would help a little bit, but I still feel like this bump here it's still going to be in the way. This is a 1x setup, so 1x10 Shimano Deore XT with Shadow Plus. That's this clutch here, this little gray thing. When you put it to the on position, the chain is a little bit tighter, it won't bounce as much. That's also useful if you're taking off the rear wheel, doing some service. That can kind of tighten it up and lock it into position. Anyway, 11 to 36 tooth, that's the cassette, so you have a decent range. 10 gears is good. Bosch has shift detection, so as you're shifting gears, I guess there's just these little gaps so that it gives the chain a chance to bounce up to the next level or a lower level, and that's cool. It's one of the few drive systems that do that. The chain ring up front is 15 tooth, a little bit smaller. In fact, it spins 2.5 times for every crank arm revolution, but that's supposed to give it better grab. And I've always felt like maybe it started and stopped a little faster, but there's a gearbox in there and there's a little bit more noise produced, maybe a little bit more drag when you're pedaling if the bike is not turned on. I still really like it, and I appreciate that in this case they've got an aluminum alloy little bash guard or chain ring protector to keep your pants from getting greasy and snagged and everything. But coming back to this 1x setup, if you look at the way the chain's lined up, I mean, I feel like you're gonna get some chips right there. They didn't protect that. It's a minor gripe. On bikes like this, there are a lot of Bosch powered electric bikes on the market today. This is the first Fuji that I've seen, and I feel like it's kind of expensive, $3,999. You do get the standard 2-year comprehensive warranty, which is sort of provided by Bosch, and then it might be like a little bit more on the frame, 5 years. You've got your tapered head tube. You've got a suspension fork, air fork, in fact, RockShox Recon with remote lockout. So that's pretty cool. Like as you're riding, you can lock it out and then let it free. This is a cross-country bike, and it's one of the few I've seen that's like a hardtail with the plus-size tires. The plus-size tires give you traction, they give you a little bit of comfort, and they turn it into almost like a 29er feel. So the larger diameter decreases your angle of attack and allows you to just roll right over things instead of steering around them. It gives you rolling momentum, so once you're up to speed, you get that nice, just solid, fluid feel. It's a lot of fun. But again, almost $4,000 for a hardtail with, I gotta say, the battery, nice integration. It's really clean, and they even they cut into that down tube a little bit, and they've got this nice cup at the base. That's great, but the motor doesn't look as nice. I've seen some high bikes and other companies that tip the motor up and really integrate it into the down tube, the seat tube, and the chain stays a little bit better. So this is just kind of the old look where it's just like big and plasticky on the sides. Same motor, very capable, 75 Newton meters of torque, very fast, fluid. It's got the shift detection and everything. It just doesn't look quite as nice. I do like the paint. I believe it only comes in this one color scheme with kind of a metallic gray, silver stickers with these neon yellow stickers, and it flows in through to the battery. Powerpack 500, that's an upgrade. It does come in 3 sizes as well, so 17, 19, 21. I'm on the 17, and this seat post is just super tight. Like I loosened it, I took the quick release off. and really loosen it. And I was pulling up on this thing. I couldn't raise it, and I just didn't want to hurt myself. And it's a demo bike, so I was like, whatever. Sometimes you have to twist the seat back and forth like this a bunch of times, and then it makes all these lines and cuts into the post, and I just didn't want to do that for this ride. And I think it demonstrates just the low standover height. I think it's only like 23 inches or something like that. So if you're someone who's a little bit more petite, or if you're a woman who's trying to get out there and actually get a good, capable electric mountain bike, this would be a good choice, because it does come in that smaller frame size, but it's still going to give you the fun, the float, the traction of the plus size tire. So it's a special bike in many ways, but I do feel like it's a little bit pricey. 30.9 millimeters on that seat post diameter. So if you wanted to swap this in, make it into more of a full suspension feel, you could keep that 100 millimeter travels up front and add a thud buster or a body float, or the Suntour NCX, or Amazon has some cheap ones, and you could set that up right. You might need to get a shim depending on which seat post suspension you get, because a lot of them are 27.2 millimeters, that's smaller, versus 30.9, a little bit wider. This is strong. It's built. I mean, it's a good setup overall. I like the bike, and coming back to this saddle, pretty sporty, nice. They've even got rear rack bosses, and it comes with the hardware, so that's cool. You could add a rack back here and turn this into a commuter during the week, getting to and from work, and then on the weekends you just take that rack off, and then you've got a really capable, fun trail bike. So yeah, coming back up to the shock, I haven't used the Recon quite as much. It felt really bouncy to me. You can really dial it in, the air pressure there, and I would probably want to tighten up the rebound so that maybe it's not springing back so much. I'm still getting the absorption, but then it's not like bouncing me up. We'll see that when I ride later. Back to the rims here for a second. These are a little bit wider than normal. They do have reinforcement eyelets. The spokes are thinner than I'm used to seeing on electric bikes. 15 gauge versus 14, that's the most common, and then 13 and 12 is what I see on a lot of hub motor designs, because there's more weight, and I don't know, I guess people want to get, potentially with an e-bike, you have a heavier rider, someone who needs the extra support, especially in this case, if you had a rack and a bunch of cargo, thicker spokes might make sense. And I think this is only like 28 versus 32 or 36, so I was a little bit puzzled. The bike weighs 47.5 pounds, which is light in the world of electric bikes, but not amazingly light. I mean, again, it's a hardtail, right? The tires weigh a little bit more, but it's an air suspension that keeps the weight down. I don't know, it's a little bit perplexing to me, and I'm not saying that it's going to be weak. It feels great to me, and Fuji builds a bunch of bikes. It's a company that I trust right off the bat. I've heard of them before. But I haven't really taken this out, and I'm not going to have the chance to. So if you get this bike, or if you have anything to say about Fuji, please chime in. Maybe fewer spokes is better in some cases. But coming back to the boost, the wider hubs, and that bracing angle we talked about, maybe that's enough, along with the wider rims. So pretty powerful brakes here. Shimano hydraulic disc brakes, 180 millimeter rotors, front and rear. Gotta love that. 2-finger levers, really easy to actuate. You can hold onto those grips. They have a little bulge in them, so they're semi-ergonomic. Adjustable reach, so if you do get the smaller 17-inch frame size, because you are a smaller person, you have shorter hands, shorter fingers, you can bring those levers in a little bit and not struggle to reach. Love that. Really easy to control this bike with the Bosch Intuvia button pad. You don't have to take your hand off the grips, and you really don't even need to look at that display once you get it figured out. It's just plus or minus, and there's a click. Pretty easy to tell if you're getting more or less power. Trigger shifters on the right. These are two-way, so you can pull in or push out, and then there's 3 steps on the easier lever. So I like that. It's pretty good setup. Shimano Deore group set there, even though we have Deore XT in the rear, which is a higher. There's our remote lockout that I was talking about before. Coming back to that cross-country or around town setup, when you're on concrete, those tires, that's enough cushion. You don't necessarily need the bob or the dive of when you brake. A lot of your stopping power comes from the front. The bike goes, and you kind of compress that suspension. It's great to be able to lock it out on the fly, no problem. Some people like that. Other people are like, I don't know. You could always swap out the fork. Again, tapered head tube. It's going to be pretty compatible with a lot of different stuff. We have a maxle up here, so 15 millimeter through axle that threads into that left base of the fork. Pretty strong, and I don't know, it's just clean. Same thing in the rear. Maxwell design with quick release. So if you needed to do some trail maintenance, perhaps you get a flat tire or something gets bent, or you're just tossing this into your car and you want to be able to turn the front of your bike like this so it lays down in the back of your car, you can take that front wheel off very quickly and easily. But coming back to that commuting scenario, because it has quick release on both wheels and on that seat tube, you're just going to want to make sure you lock that up so people don't steal your stuff. The grips, they are locking, which is nice. They're not going to twist if you really bear down. I like the pedals. These are Welgo aluminum alloy platform. They've got little nubs. They're not the highest end in terms of lightweight, but they're strong, they're grippy, and these aren't as sharp as the adjustable height pins that you get on like the magnesium Welgos, so they might not cut up your shins quite as much if you slip off of them. And I just like, they're black, they match. FSA cranks, 175 millimeters, so they're a little bit longer. 170 is kind of normal. But I think that the bike's relatively high off the ground, so if you're turning hard and leaning, hopefully you don't get a lot of pedal drag. But that's something I think about. Always bring your pedal up when you're cornering. And then the cockpit here, I think it's 80 millimeter stem, 7-degree rise. We've got a few stacks in here, 10 degree and 5 millimeter, not degree, millimeter. So yeah, I don't know. Just coming back and looking at it, I like the top tube, how it just meets with those seat stays. I guess that some of that comes from how they've built out the rear end here, the internally routed cables. The way that the Bosch motor works is it's listening to your pedal cadence, how hard you're pushing, your pedal torque, and your rear wheel speed. You can see a little sensor in there, 1,000 times per second. And that's determining when and how much power it's going to give you. Very capable system, and it's running off the Powerpack 500. All the older packs were just 400 watt hours. This one's 500, so you're getting like 25% more capacity. It really doesn't weigh that much more. It's about 5.7 pounds. You could take it off the bike and inside if you were using this to commute. Same thing with the display. I love that this is removable. Just pops right off. Has a little micro USB port on the side, so you could maybe use your phone or a music player or something. Right here on the cockpit, I have plugged in my iPhone. It did work, maintained the charge, and it's cool. You can tap into that battery pack there. Here are the keys. Go ahead and twist it, lift it up. That's what it looks like. You can see that metal down there, it's just shielding. It's just meant for design purposes, I think. And it does look a little bit better. These batteries are backwards compatible, so if you have a Powerpack 400 from before, you could use that with this bike, and then you'd have two batteries, 36 volt, 13.4 amp hours. So again, roughly 500 watt hours. And when you put it back in, I usually, in this case, see there's no spring, so I like lock it, pull the key out, and now I'm gonna push down and make sure that it clicks. Here, it clicked right into place. This one's actually a little bit loose. You can have your dealer tighten that up. The interface is adjustable, and some of these bikes, I found that they're a little too tight, and I'm like really pushing down, kind of like that seat post and the seat tube in this case. That's a little bit too tight. So, I don't know what you do about that. Maybe they have a tool they can loosen it up. I might even consider, back to that seat post suspension. I would probably just get it set up and then really crank it down and leave it. But the battery pack, you don't want that to be rattling around too much. It does have a power indicator on the right-hand side, left-hand side, so you can tell how full it is even when it's not on the bike. Like, let's say that's up at your office, and you're like, did I charge it? You can just check real quick. Here's the charging port on the bike. So for people like me, don't have a lot of room, and you have a fancy bike like this, you store it inside, you don't have to take the battery pack every time off. You can just plug it right in and you're all set. So I pressed that power indicator on the battery pack, and it turned on the display, but otherwise you would press the power button here. It turns on very quickly. It's monochrome. It is backlit, very faint blue glow. You've got your battery capacity with 5 ticks. Those are 20% increments. Not my favorite. I would appreciate a percentage just to be more precise. But thankfully, that's not all you get. You do have a range estimator too. So I'm pressing this I button. It's replicated over here. Going to range. So as I arrow up or press the plus button over here into the lowest level of assist, eco, it says, well, 89 miles. That's pretty cool. It's dynamically telling me based on the riding I've been doing, the battery capacity, and the level of assist, how far it thinks I can go. And I just learned that if you hold reset, it sort of clears out the most recent ride data, and then it resets and says 89 miles. So this bike hasn't been ridden hardly at all. Hasn't really been taking into account my own riding performance. But for you, let's say you're lighter than me, or maybe you're a lot heavier than me, or you live somewhere where it's windy all the time, or there are hills or whatever. Like, it's just so dynamic, and that's something I love about the Bosch systems, and the Intuvia makes it really easy to get to. So I'm gonna press that I button again over on the left. You can also see your odometer, trip distance, clock, max speed, average speed, trip time. So all of those different menus, you just press the I. There is a light bulb button, but on this bike, it doesn't really come with lights. So if you want lights, if you're doing that city commuter thing and you want them to run off that main battery versus having them bungeed on and easier to steal that way, you can, a lot of your shops, they can actually wire them in. The Bosch system's set up for that. So ask them if you're going somewhere. I'm actually just down the street from Motostrano in Redwood City, California. They've got a ton of Bosch powered bikes, and they do customize them for people, add lights. So again, you can ask about that depending on your needs. Speed in miles per hour. You can hold reset and I for a couple seconds. Bike. And there we go. It brings us into the menu system. So you can adjust your clock, your wheel circumference, your language. I'm in English right now. And then units, kilometers, miles per hour. Once you're done going through these, hold I and reset again. And we're out. Perfect. A minute ago it was rolling away because it does have a kickstand, and it's tool-free adjustable, so I was able to lengthen it and stand the bike more straight for the photos. I like that it's rear-mounted like this, stays out of the way. It might bounce around if you're on rough terrain, but at least when it's down, if you're walking this through your garage, see the crank arms won't collide with it. Something that I think about a lot because I'm always pulling the bikes out for these reviews. I guess that's kind of it. Internally routed cables. Really clean look, even from this side. And again, the motor, it doesn't look terrible. I think it actually matches the paint well. It's just not quite as sleek as some of the 2017 and newer bikes that I've been looking at lately. Oval Concepts seems to be the Fuji brand, so you can see Oval Concepts hub, Oval Concepts seat post, Oval Concepts handlebar, stem, all these extra parts. I don't know exactly how large Fuji is, but you know, it reminds me of Trek, and they have their Bone Trager line of just hardware that you see on the bikes and stuff. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good overview. I think I might just hop on this thing and ride around, let you see that motor in action. It's great because there's no chain cover. You're going to be able to see it starting and stopping quickly. Remember, that turns 2.5 times for every crank revolution, so 15 tooth times 2.5, and that's roughly the size of a traditional chain ring. There we go. I'm gonna arrow this up to turbo. Whoa. Super zippy, and I am in a lower gear right now, so it's really perfect for climbing. Right now I'm pedaling gently, and it's like the motor isn't even coming on. But then when I start to push down, it kicks right up to speed. You do have to shift gears if you want to hit the maximum speed. And it's kind of like a manual transmission car. As you switch gears, you empower the motor to function more efficiently or to have more power. So a lower gear is going to help you climb a steep hill if you're riding off-road. And then those higher gears, you're going to be able to hit 20 miles per hour pretty easily in the top several gears, in my experience, especially in turbo mode. And the Bosch system gives you up to 120 RPM support. So that's your crank arm revolution, 120 RPM. And the motor's still going to be helping you, like, whereas a lot of some of the cheaper systems, some of the higher end ones are starting to match this, but for a while they would only match to 100 RPM. And I would struggle with that, like Yamaha in particular on the Enduro high bikes. I would be riding with those, trying to climb, and I like to spin. I'm like going fast, and then the motor would just like dropped out on me. It wouldn't help anymore at a certain RPM. That was just me working on it. So for me, Bosch has always been a system that felt zippy and responsive, but the zippiness for some people is almost like too much. You do have 4 levels of assist. So I've always felt like if you take it down to Tour or Eco, not only do you get more range, but it's just quieter, it's smoother, and then it feels more natural. Eco basically offsets the weight of the bike. Even though this is 47.5 pounds, and that's relatively light for an e-bike, it's still heavier than a regular bike, most regular bikes anyway. So Eco mode takes the edge off. I'm gonna ride around in Eco mode now just so you can see what that's like. Still start to hear it at that higher RPM, but notice how quickly that chainring stops spinning when I stop pedaling. It feels almost instantaneous, and that's what you want for a bike like this that's off-road capable. Maybe you're out there on the edge of a trail, it's dusty, it's gravelly, loose terrain. You want the bike to stop right away. Back to those hydraulic disc brakes and the Bosch system being really responsive. Okay guys, from here you can see that suspension, a little bit of bounce that I was talking about. Maybe turn up the rebound. And just the fat tires, a little bit of riding here. I'm gonna take it all the way up to turbo mode. You may have noticed that that parking brake that I hit a minute ago. I took it at an angle. I didn't really pull up when I went over it, and these tires just kind of ate it up, and I was fine. With narrower tires and a different setup, I might have like slid sideways and crashed. So that was cool. I'm glad that worked out. Okay, the idea here is that you can look down, listen to that drivetrain. I'm going to shift some gears. The system does have shift detection, so it's leaving little gaps for that chain to slip up or down onto different sprockets. And again, just how quickly it starts and stops. I'm gonna leave it in turbo mode. Right there. The motor just sort of fades out. Those fat tires are super fun. I think that's all I have to say about this bike. I think it's pretty cool. I was excited to review a Fuji and just see how it rode and look at it. A couple little improvements maybe on the chainstay and the slap guard situation over there. You know, maybe coming back to thinking about which size fits you and then your budget and do you need a rack or not. I'd be really excited to ride this bike around town, and I think it looks awesome, whether for a man or a woman. But yeah, it is a little bit pricier. So anyway, for the full written review on this, including the standover height, the length of the bike, all those other stats I measured, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. Of course, have fun out there, ride safe. Now that we're inside, you can see that backlight that I was talking about, the light blue. And I failed to mention that there's also a walk mode that's active on this. So it's the little button on top of the remote button pad on the left. You press walk, and then it says walk assist, hold plus. And there we go. You can see the cranks turning themselves. So this would be useful, especially if you had a rear rack added and it's heavy and you're trying to push this bike up, maybe even up some stairs. Some people who live upstairs, it'll help the bike go up. Or if you're just with a friend in a crowded location and you want to go slowly and have the bike help itself forward. The one thing I would be careful of is those crank arms, because they are going to be turning, and that left crank arm, if you're walking on the left side of the bike, it could scrape your shins. So just be aware.